Hello. Network and One, our gender equality network. I'm Sabrina Rodriguez, Global Head of Digital Marketing here at Dentsu and co-chair of the One Network. I'm feeling incredibly honored today to be facilitating the conversation with such an incredible group of women from across the business. Today, we'll be spending the next hour having an open and honest conversation about Black female representation, hearing from the panel in terms of their personal experiences, their views, their hopes for our society and our industry as we strive to maintain energy and momentum to drive positive, sustainable change for everyone. We'll look to spend the last 50 minutes or so of the discussion today taking any questions. So if you'd like to ask our panelists anything, please feel free to submit your thoughts, your questions in the comments below as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. But for now, let me hand it over to our wonderful group of panelists to introduce themselves. Alekia?
Hi everyone, I'm Alekia Equati and I'm an account director at Gyro and also co-founder of Represent.
Hi, I'm Ibby. I'm an account manager within the Amplify network of Dentsu and I've been here for 2 years.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm an account director at LivePoster, part of the out-of-home arm of Dentsu. And I started a BAME group within our opcos over there called No Shade last year.
Hi guys, I'm Tenny. I'm a senior programmatic manager at Merkle.
It's fabulous to have you with us, ladies. Why do you think, first of all, it's so important for us to be having this conversation today in the advertising industry when it comes to Black female representation? And what do you think are some of the key challenges and barriers that you face? Maybe Tenny, you can start us off.
Sure. I think for me, even that word representation, that's kind of part of the challenge and the reason why we need to have these discussions, because a lot of the time you'll look around and you'll see people that don't look like you, sometimes at a peer level, but more often than not at a very senior level. You can often count on a couple of digits how many people are female at very senior levels, let alone Black females as well. So being able to have those discussions are quite important, because it makes you feel like you can kind of be yourself and you can have those open, honest discussions with people, but also it's those conversations that start to help make that change as well. Yeah. Not sure if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo everything Tenny just said, and also I think, you know, in advertising, we're responsible for the way people are perceived. So what Tenny was saying about representation is key. So we put out into the world and into society these images of people, and that can either break or build stereotypes, whether they're positive or negative. And I think we need to take that responsibility really seriously. And also, we're consumers, so Black women are consumers. So to not consider us as equals to other consumers is just doesn't really make any business sense. Yeah, that's what I would add to Tenny's very perfect statement.
I would say that the story, our story, you know, where we are as women, first and foremost, has been written by a white man. You know, that's where the advertising industry began. And it's so easy to come into the industry and tell that same story. And that story wasn't written by people that look like us. It wasn't written by Black women, it wasn't written by women, it wasn't written by Black people. Yeah. So I think that the challenge that we have is having the confidence to actually come into the industry and tell our own stories. And as women, we're already faced with the challenges that come with just being different, just being the gender that we are, and the pressures that we face as women. And then we have the fact that we collectively are Black women, and the pressures that society and our own cultures can put on us for wanting to either work in the industry or wanting to work at all. So yeah, I just think we really need to come in, and we need to encourage others to come in and drive and tell their own stories and not just continue the story that belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, it's equally important, I think, as well, from the perspective of when we look at the representation we currently have. And I think I've been in media for about 8 years now, and the only person I can think of who is really one of the few Black women who've done very well for themselves in this industry is Karen Blackett. And that was the name that I heard back in 2012 when I was first coming into the industry. And that's still the only name that I can really remember 8 years later. So I think it's important to have this conversation, because I'll be honest, I don't think there is any representation as it stands right now. I don't think we have what we're trying to look for really at a senior level.
Yeah, it's that aspirational piece, isn't it? It's having that role model that we can all work towards, that's so important. And I'd be really interested to hear as well from you guys, how did you start your career in marketing and advertising? What drove you to this industry in particular? And I'd love to hear about your experience and your journey, to get to where you guys are now. Alekia, I'd love to hear like your experience in particular as someone involved with the Represent network, and I'm sure you're kind of involved with some of that recruitment piece as well.
So my journey wasn't planned. It was an accident. I finished uni. I was like living in London, working in a cinema, and then obviously needed to support myself. And so got a job in media sales for just a directory, and I hated it. So left there without a job, and then was looking at what my skills lended themselves to, and then got a job as a planner buyer at my last agency, like 7 years ago now or something. And left there as a media manager, and then since working at Gyro have become an account director. So kind of just natural progression in terms of like the media side of advertising. In terms of my experience in getting to where I am today, and I think part of the driving force behind why I thought it was so important to start Represent and to continue those conversations is because I think I have had to in my career kind of conform, and I think I've done well on account of being able to take a joke. It's something I talk about all the time. Our industry is like absolutely rife of, it's just full of crap banter basically. That's really fueled on sexism and often racism. And I think I learned quite quickly that if I laughed the loudest, people would be like, whoa, like she can kind of like keep pace with us. And that did serve me quite well early on in my career. But then I think in terms of being able to, go beyond that and become a bit more senior in the industry and in what I do, I think it was learning to be a bit more confident once I really understood my capabilities. And it was only when I was confident and I was able to challenge things that actually I felt like I was being taken seriously. So yeah, I think it's quite sad looking back, thinking about all of the really uncomfortable encounters that I had, that I swallowed and kind of participated in because it was my way of being accepted and also, gaining progression. But I'm glad I'm not in that position anymore, and I think it was a huge learning curve. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
Interesting. How about the rest of you guys? How were your experiences getting to where you are, Ibby?
So yeah, similar to Alekia, I didn't plan the advertising industry. I knew that I wanted to work in media. I didn't really know what part of media I wanted to go into. And I sort of ended up in a sort of recruitment media type company. And then from there ended up moving into more of a traditional agency setting. And I've been doing that sort of work ever since. But in terms of my path in, I think one experience that really stands out to me is when I had gotten my first sort of official media job, which was at an agency within another big network. A lot of the people that I met had assumed I was an intern. They had made sort of the assumption that because most of the paths into the industry do come from internships, that when I was sort of there and working as an account exec, the amount of people who said, oh, when's your last day? When's your internship ended? And I was like, no, I work here. I still work here and hopefully will continue to work here. And it was quite interesting. I didn't look back on those sort of comments as a reflection of, I guess, the diversity issue we had within our industry until maybe a couple of years later, when it then became like that topical conversation and became more of an agenda for the wider industry to sort of focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Catherine, was your experience kind of similar, or did you go through a different path?
Yeah, so mine was actually completely different. So family background, my family tend to be in kind of events and events catering, and so I'd gone to uni and I'd worked for an events staffing company, and I had a kind of a long career, about 10 years working in the events industry, kind of on different sides, at different levels, until my last role in the events industry. I was managing a relatively large team, and it just kind of fell out of love with it. It wasn't in line with what my degree was. I wanted to do something that was a bit more creative. So I basically was like, right, I'm just going to look widely at roles that are creative, that also have some commercial elements to them. And I found myself in my first role, which is at Life Poster, which is where I am now. I've been here for almost 5 years. And honestly, I think finding Life Poster was luck, maybe. I think I was incredibly lucky to interview with my manager, who's from a similar background as me. And I was just very lucky in coming into the business and in coming into this industry. And my understanding of it has grown. But I guess I don't have the similar experiences that Alicia and Ibi have in respects of kind of trying to get in or falling into. I was looking for something specific and ended up in sometimes what feels like a bit of a niche, which is out of home, but I absolutely love it.
In advertising.
Yeah.
Cool, I guess it's my turn. So I was meant to study medicine, like most people who are second generation. Your parents want you to either study medicine, law, accounting, engineering, just something like that. I think we were talking about this yesterday, where especially when your parents are from another country or another ethnicity, there's that want for you to get something that they see as being very stable, as opposed to you pursuing something that might be a bit of a passion. So I decided to rebel when I was writing my personal statement and did a complete 180 and decided I didn't want to study medicine and that I was going to work in advertising, and went on to actually go and do a degree in media, then a master's in marketing. And then I came to Merkel, which was the specific arm of Merkel that I work in. It was known as Periscopics when I first joined. Came through a recruiter who I feel like she recruited everybody, but she knew what she was doing. She recruited everyone. And I think I was quite fortunate in that being quite a good process, especially with the people that interviewed me. They were quite lovely. And even going on to the final stage, it just was very enjoyable. I cannot explain why, but we were all in there laughing. And I've been at Merkel for over 5 years now. And in that time, I've kind of traversed different departments, started off in search, then moved on into programmatic. And I'm actually doing a bit of a rotation into paid social. So I've just kind of been fortunate enough to do a lot of different things that I've expressed that I wanted to do.
That's awesome. And I guess one area that I know, sitting on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, that we look at is how do we bring more diverse talent into the industry and into our company?
I'm happy to just jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Just because it popped into my mind last night. Last year, there was an event. Forgive me, anyone from Postco who's on that's listening, because I don't remember exactly what the event was. It was in the summer. It was for an external company that came in. There were loads of CEOs and MDs and all sorts in the event, and there was a panel. And a question came up, and it was very similar to this question. And I remember sitting there thinking, it's really not that difficult. So I put my hand up and I was like, right, like the answer to this question is you just find us. We're not hiding anywhere. You know, we're not only looking for jobs in different places. We are women, we are Black women, we're exactly the same as everybody else. Whilst I think that it's good to start at this point, maybe with quotas, I don't think that they should be in place permanently. I definitely would just be like, anyone that's trying to find us, we're not hiding. You can just find us. You know, just if you specifically want to make sure that you're hiring more diverse people, then make sure that you're getting diverse CVs through, make sure that the recruitment company that you're hiring is diverse. Yeah, we're not hiding.
Yeah. And actually, it's something we spoke about the other day, is like a similar thing. The IPA did some research with Debut on graduate talent, and they found that women were far more likely to actively pursue a career in advertising, as were people from Black and other underrepresented backgrounds. And so I don't think, as Catherine was just saying, I don't think it's an issue in demand, like we want to work, but I think we're not necessarily as an industry creating an environment where we're opening, you know, we've got our arms open and we're taking people in, or we are giving them the same experience when they get here. So, you know, if people are coming to interview, what do our interview panels look like? A girl on my team who I interviewed said to me, like, she left the interview and she was like absolutely shocked that I was a Black woman. She's also a Black woman. And it made me think, like, I've never been interviewed by someone that was of my race, or actually that wasn't white, to be honest. And it really touched me that I could have had such, like, so just by walking into the room and being there and being present, I had a positive impact on someone's, you know, recruitment process. And so I think it's not only sourcing the talent, because that exists, that's not an issue, even though people will keep saying it is. It's actually like when we get that talent and that we're privileged enough to have people come and interview with us, what experience are we giving them to ensure that they actually are connected and they want to work for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's similar to sort of what Aleka said. I've also myself never been interviewed by someone who sort of looks like me or comes from the same background as me. But one thing I also took from the sort of IPA statistics was that not only were we struggling to recruit diverse talent, but we were struggling to keep diverse talent in the industry. And I think that that's a testament to the culture that we have. Obviously, our culture is ingrained in all parts of how we've lived, in where we've grown up, the people we've surrounded ourselves with. But I think that there's also certain cultures that we've normalized. You know, one thing I always consistently hear is the UK has a big passion for drinking, and anyone who ever comes to the UK has always mentioned that to me. And I think it's very apparent in our industry that that is something that, you know, is encouraged. We are a social industry. But I find that in some ways that in itself can alienate certain people from certain religious backgrounds, from certain ethnicities as well. So even within how we create company cultures, we may, because we're trying to appeal to a mass perspective, we may be actually alienating people who then feel disenfranchised from that culture because it's not how they've lived their lives, or it's not how they grew up. So I think we have to really take into consideration that all of the things that we consider normal come from a culture that we've inherited from many sort of generations, and it's that British culture that we hold on to so tightly. But in some ways, we may actually be alienating other cultures that don't quite fit into that that culture that we hold so tight onto. So I do think that before we start bringing in diverse talent, we need to really look into the culture we're bringing them into, because otherwise they're going to come and then they're going to stay for a couple of months and then leave because they realize that this world won't accept them the way that they are.
That's a really, really good point. Catherine, do you have a view on that in terms of, you know, the cultural barriers versus some of the sort of logistical changes that we can make to our recruitment practices?
Yeah, I mean, there's something I just, again, things pop into my mind, is just little things that we can do as individuals. And again, it's really difficult to do that when you first start in your career. You know, you're new, you want to fit in. You want to do what everyone else is doing. You don't want to be that person that, well, you don't really want to risk, firstly, not passing your probation. You know, there doesn't always need to be a reason for that. You know, if you're not fitting in with the company culture, that's maybe a reason for them to not keep you on in the job, right? But one of the things that we do at Posterscope, or did when we were back in the office, when we could all meet up together in the social team, is actually talk about different types of people and different types of events. And we actively tried to make sure that those events were accepting of everybody, and that everybody could go to those events, whether it's a parent who you would usually need to leave the office early to go and collect their child, or whether it's someone that doesn't drink. So, you know, if there is an event that does involve drinking, or that might have usually been focused heavily on drinking, that there are other options and there are other things available that other people can take part in and other people can do.
I totally agree with that. I think one of the, like, I literally agree with everything. I think that what that will require, though, is for people at a more senior level that are holding the purse strings to actually invest more in those things as well, as opposed to, okay, everyone, let's go to the pub on a Friday. Everyone spends their own money. It doesn't really cost that much, as opposed to just doing that, but also looking at having those more diverse events, or events that don't alienate certain people. Because I wouldn't say I've never been the type of person that will go to the pub on a Friday. So, and everyone else would go, and then you come in on Monday, everyone's talking about stuff, and you're kind of like, I wasn't there, just, you know, not part of it.
Yeah, and just sorry to bang on about it, but we could probably speak about every single one of these questions forever, but
bang on.
I think something that I think companies often focus on is quotas and the numbers and what they can put in graphs and charts to kind of show off about how diverse a business they are. But I think what's coming out and what we're all saying is actually that's one part of it, but there's no point of having a really diverse business if the makeup of your business and how people feel doesn't match that. So it's the inclusion piece. It's always about inclusion and making sure people can bring themselves to work. And that starts at the recruitment process, and it you know, it starts at every level of the recruitment process as well, not just at a more junior level, but who are we bringing in as our next CEO, or who are we bringing in to, you know, lead whatever teams, rather than the shoulder tapping that we've all discussed as well, people bringing in people that they used to work with. Why are we not nurturing talent that's already here? We've got people here who we could nurture, but they're leaving, you know, in lots of different companies. And why is that?
Yeah, I love a phrase that my ex-co-chair of the One Network used to share with me, which was that diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being invited to dance. And that's there's one thing, building a diverse culture, but an inclusive.
I think we lost you there, but the sentiment was beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point going to party if you're going to stand on the sidelines, right?
Exactly.
So one topic that's of high interest for a lot of companies right now is well-being and health. And it's increasingly important as we work in a lockdown world, and more important than ever, to manage stress, manage anxiety, get enough sleep, know how to turn off. Do you feel like there's a heightened pressure on your mental and physical well-being as a female woman?
Yeah, I would say massively, hugely. And we've talked about some things collectively previously. But I think first and foremost, it's hard enough being a woman. And, you know, I've gone into many meetings where I've been the only woman there. I've been the only person of colour. I've been the only woman and person of colour in that meeting. It's hard. It's not only hard because of the pressures that society put on us that we feel, but it's hard because of the pressures that we put on ourselves. And yeah, like you get up, you put on your glad rags, you put on your happy smiley face, and you get on with it. But you know, it's difficult. I remember Ibby was talking about and I'll let you talk about it, but talking about the mental health days. And even last night after you said that, I was like, there have been many a day where I have not been well. And you know, you book those days off as holiday. You know, there is a stigma around looking after your mental health. And I think even within our communities, we could probably agree, statistics show that talking about mental health within Black and ethnic minorities communities is still quite taboo. And now I joked about it, but it actually is really quite true. If there's something seriously mentally wrong with me, the first thing that my mom or my dad would do is say, right, we should pray. And not dissing praying, but it's not going to solve every mental health problem. Like, you know, it's not the solution to those problems. We need to be able to talk about them more. We need to feel confident and comfortable talking about them more and sharing that more, not only within our own communities, but also in the workplace.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I completely agree as well, Catherine. Yeah, it's tricky because I think, again, it's that sentiment of like, if you sometimes you just have those days where you're just not, you wake up on the wrong side of bed, you drop your phone in the toilet, you stub your toe on the way out, you've left your Oyster card at home, and then by the time you get to work after all of that's happened, and then you have like 50 emails where something's gone wrong and you just feel a little bit crushed inside. You know, sometimes you just have those days. And I think there's this perspective that we all have to be strong, right? We've heard that narrative of the strong Black woman. And, you know, in recent sort of, where does that come from? Who knows? But there's been a sentiment, particularly in the last couple of months, about, you know, check on your strong friends. But I think that it's that case of, you know, we're seen to come in to almost fix the problems that we had already flagged ages ago, that then no one wanted to hear because it was too hard to have that conversation. So I do think that it can be a struggle sometimes to, you know, always have to be that person with a smile on your face to be like, guys, we've got this, when you also just want to kind of go home and, you know, put on your PJs and stick on Love Island and forget the world a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think also there's that cultural aspect as well that Catherine was talking about, with like the first thing being like prayer. And well, I mean, yes, pray, but also talk to a mental health professional and go for counseling, go for therapy, like get the actual treatment that you need. I definitely think that things are changing with our generation, but if you look at things from like our parents' perspective, this is like another thing we were talking about, where I would probably say a lot of them were stressed, depressed, or had anxiety as well, but they didn't call it that, which is why they'll come here and they'll be like, oh, what is this thing called depression? This is essentially like a white man's problem, where it's like, no, poor mental health is actually a global issue. So I definitely agree that a lot of those things, and that kind of trope that sometimes you might even put on yourself in terms of having to be strong, having to just continue to carry through even when you feel like you can't. I know for me, from my personal experience, it's led to me having quite poor health, both physically and mentally at work. I've learnt my lesson now, though. I do not play with my health at all, but I've had to learn that lesson very hard a couple of times, and it's taken those couple of times, and just know. Mental health is very important.
Absolutely.
I think there definitely is unique pressure on Black women as well, because not only do we, from a very young age, are we told, as a Black person, you need to do twice as much as everybody else, like you need to work harder and then you'll get the same. So it's embedded in us from a really, really young age that in order to just get equal, we have to work twice or three times as hard. And so I think, you know, I was super aware of that growing up. In school, teachers reminded me of it, like shockingly. My parents would remind me of that. And then, you know, you get to the workplace. And for me, I wasn't even, the gender thing didn't come into play for me until I got into the world of work. And then I realized that was just like another layer that I had to kind of battle against. But yeah, I think it's just really, really, really deeply ingrained. And like Catherine said a moment ago, that adds to the pressure we put on ourselves, because it's part of our DNA. We know, well, I say no, even me saying that I know I have to work harder is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to.
No.
But it's so embedded that I'm like, I know I have to do this.
Yeah.
When actually I should, if I work as just as much as, I don't know, a white guy, we should be paid the same. We should be put into the same roles. It should be that simple, but it's not. And we really feel that. We carry it with us.
Do you ever wonder what the world would be like if all the women and all the people of colour, especially the women of colour, just put in the same amount of effort as the standard white privileged?
Things would stop working. Everything would fall to crap. No, I'm joking.
Maybe everything. I don't know. Or maybe
that I saw once.
Fine. Maybe
there's a tweet that I saw once that made me laugh. It said, I'm all for celebrating Black excellence, but can we also celebrate Black mediocrity as well? Some days I just want to be mediocre and have that be okay. Like some days, you know, you just, like I said, you have those off days where you come in and things just aren't working for you. That report that normally takes you 15 minutes somehow took you 40 minutes today. And I think sometimes that's okay. You know, you do have off days and that should be allowed. You shouldn't have to be on the ball all the time because it is so exhausting.
Yeah, and I think that's something that...
Sorry, I think even to say mediocre, it's like, right, well, we can call that mediocre. It's mediocre for us. But again, using the stereotypical example of a white man, that may not be his mediocre. That just might be his everyday. But we would call that mediocre. But he's high flying. He's living his life. He's doing great. He's getting promoted. He's getting paid more than you are.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
all true.
Yeah, and there's plenty of not just evidence. There's plenty of statistical evidence that shows that women, in particular, do have to work harder and prove themselves more than their male counterparts get just as far. And you know that's something that seen or experienced, and you know, I think there is, you know, as we were perspective, there's that cultural piece and the unconscious CEO gets pulled into a bit.
We keep losing you, Sabrina.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Obviously, the last scene, a monumental shift in the fabric.
Oh, you've gone again.
I think we're still losing you.
Living technical difficulty.
Yeah.
Should I think I know the next question. Should I jump in?
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in.
Go for it.
So guys, the last few months have been, you know, seen monumental changes in our society. And I think it'd be good to find out from all of you what the Black Lives Matter protests how they've impacted on you, and you know, in your personal and professional lives, and how you perceive, you know, trending moments like Me Too and now BLM. Catherine.
Yeah. Firstly, I completely forgot that Me Too was a thing. I'm going to hold my hand up and say that. So if anyone is watching and feels the same way, don't feel a way that you kind of forgot that the Me Too movement was a movement that happened. I think that there are so many trends and there is so much happening, and you know, the world we live in now compared to the world we lived in 6 months ago is just so vastly different. That how do we ensure that we aren't just jumping on board with a trend, you know, and just saying hashtag Me Too because it's trending, and saying Black Lives Matter because it's trending. And you know, I was on an event this week, obviously virtual, and somebody on that event said that they didn't even change their profile, a Black person, they didn't change their profile to a Black profile picture because they just thought it was stupid. And I was a bit like, oh. But that's how they feel. And I think in order for us to ensure that these things aren't trends, we just have to keep that momentum going. You know, for me, I have been on furlough from June. Haven't had the nicest year regarding COVID and not being able to see family and the loss of family members and the like. But I think for the first time, and as someone who I would say I'm a bit of an activist, I will go down to protests. I will stand up for the things I believe in. I'm an advocate for as unbiased a world as we can make it. And for the fact that Black lives do matter, and for the fact that we are being killed. Hello, Breonna Taylor. What happened? That was ridiculous. Like 2 out of 3 of them have gotten off scot-free, and the other one has been given a very, very minimal sentence.
I think one of them was charged for shooting into the neighbor's house. Like, I think the thing is that
charged for the bullets that missed her.
A war got more justice than Breonna Taylor. I think that's just ridiculous.
Exactly. But I feel for the first time, and again, maybe it's a generational thing, maybe it's our generation, I really want to ask our parents' generation and those people that are older than us, what did you guys do? What were you doing? Were you just trying to live your lives and be compliant and just float around and exist when these things were happening throughout the 80s and the 90s? Because I feel like for the first time, we might actually see some longer term change.
Yeah. I think with our parents' generation, especially if a lot of them were first or second generation immigrants, there was that notion of wanting to fit in and not wanting to cause too much trouble, so you could kind of just carry on with things and get to live your life. Because even certain things that I'll talk to my mum about, she's like, oh no, you shouldn't say that to people, you don't want to cause trouble. And I'm kind of like, but why? This is an issue, therefore this should change. We should be speaking about these things and speaking to the right people about these things as well, so we can make those deeper structural changes as well, as opposed to just trying to go along and fit in. Because if you keep doing that, things won't change, especially if you then allow that to make you feel like you're too uncomfortable to talk about certain things as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of jump on Tenny's point, I think that back then assimilation meant survival, right? You had to fit in to be able to live. And I think it's almost sad that, your basic human rights were denied to you because you looked different, you were perceived to be different. And so you had to assimilate to be able to have the same access to all of the things you should have had just as a human being, like your right to have a job, your right to stay in that job, your right to be treated with respect at that job, right? And all of those things are meant to make other people around you feel better that you exist. And then on top of that, you have to then somehow change your language, change the way you speak, change the way you act. You have to code switch, right? So again, to then on top of the assimilation, to make people even feel more comfortable. So that identity that you then built up at work somehow becomes who you are outside of work. Right? You don't even know who you are in between these two separate worlds. So I think that's definitely a testament to the older generation in terms of what they had to go through. I think June was a difficult month, I think for many people. I think that it was hard in two different ways. I have a lot of family in the States. I'm there twice a year to see all my nieces and nephews and whatnot. And when the marches were going on and obviously seeing everything that was happening on social media, reaching out to those people directly was really important to me. And then it was even harder, I think, in some ways to see my nephew, who is only 8 years old, going on marches. And so obviously, like, he's a child. And I think that in some ways, I kind of had hoped we'd have a little bit more time before we had to have that conversation with him, and I think that was something that I hadn't really realized yet, that as the younger generation are growing up, we are now at a point where we've moved beyond in some sense, Gen Z. We have a new, younger generation beyond them that are growing up in a new world. And they have to live with the reality that they have to almost apologize for things that they haven't even done yet. That's the world we sort of live in, right? They have to apologize for other people's perceptions of them, and I think that one thing that was really important to me during June was to really prioritize, again, well-being, right? I had to really work on how I wanted to protest. And so I kind of came up with a phrase, which is self-care is also a form of protest, which is that, if you want to mute Instagram or Twitter or your emails or WhatsApp for the day, 100% did it. I actually ended up leaving Instagram for 2 weeks because I literally could not deal with the barrage of just of everything that was happening. It all just got a little bit too much. I had to switch from Twitter for a month because it was almost a black hole of just so much police brutality videos that it almost became a bit of a parody of itself. But I also think I got to a point where I was a little bit exhausted, because for me, Black Lives Matter had been around for quite some time. You know, we obviously talk about Breonna Taylor, but we go back even further, we have Trayvon Martin, we have Eric Garner, you know, we have Philando Castile, right? Philando Castile was back in 2016. So this isn't something that's a new thing. It's been going on for a very long time. And so for me, by the time we got to June of 2020, I won't lie, I was a little bit exhausted.
Yeah.
Because it's been happening, you know, and it's still happening, you know. So I do think that what we really need right now is for people who want to call themselves allies to take on the labor, right? To take on the work, because we can't do it on our own. It's impossible, you know. It takes everyone. It takes the effort of every single person to want to push for change, you know. So I think that if you truly want to be involved and make a difference, then you have to get your hands dirty. So putting a black square on Instagram is not going to help me. Painting a post box black is not going to help me.
4 post boxes.
4 post boxes.
Only 4 post boxes.
Yeah. Is not going to help me. But structural change will help me. Putting money where your mouth is will help me. And that's what we really need. We need leaders to use the power that they have, to use the privilege that they have, to make it better for everyone, because it's bigger than just the 4 of us. There's an entire community out there who just want to live, and they should be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually exactly the same. I had to kind of distance myself from social media as well. And it's funny what you were saying earlier about your friend Catherine, who didn't want to post the black square, and I was exactly the same. And I spent probably about a month just utterly furious that everybody suddenly had something like a pretty filter, a nice quote that they could put in a box or that they could put on their story that was a trend. And I was waiting for the weeks to pass and for people to move on, and they did. Obviously things keep popping up every now and again, but I really struggled with that, because I was like, why are you all surprised? Why are you all suddenly noticing that this is happening? Because it's not a new thing. It's not new because it's on camera. And if that was the only reason, then we would have been outraged years ago, because we've been seeing videos like this forever, for as long as there's been video. But on the flip side of that, because I can't be too negative all the time, it's meant that I think organisations have started to engage with, you know, groups like Represent, which is our ethnic diversity network, in a different way. Me and some of the other guys in Represent had like loads of people arrive on our door after the news was starting to, you know, showing that it was gaining traction, which is, you know, it's bittersweet, because obviously you would hope that all organisations would have that momentum always, but you know, we all know that's not the case. But we've had sustained support now, and I think that movement has, you know, caused that, and we wouldn't necessarily have that had that not been a trending hashtag. So there's positives to take from it, but, you know, in terms of what you say, Abby, about mental health and how a movement like that can impact on Black people's mental health, it's huge. I really struggled for a long time. I still struggle when I see things. I think we might still...
Is Sabrina back?
Is Sabrina back? I think she's still might be having issues.
We've had a question. I don't know if you guys have seen.
Sorry, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. I was ready to put on my hosting hat.
You might need to again. My Wi-Fi is definitely not playing games today. So obviously, you know, there are, as you said, it's a double-sided coin, right? You've got the opportunities that come off these social trends. It's how do you ride that wave of momentum, and how do you keep that momentum going? So, Alekia, maybe like it would be interesting to hear. And
I'm gonna guest that you're saying, it'd be interesting to hear how we think organisations can continue the momentum after Black Lives Matter, through the lens of represent, which I can do for you. So one thing that we've been discussing a lot with leadership, and they're fully on board with, which is amazing, is like accountability in leadership, and strong leadership, people taking absolute ownership of driving change and not relying on people like us who are from the underrepresented communities, to drive all of that change. And I think people have always been uncomfortable around this topic, and I think the things that have happened in the news recently have forced people into conversation. I've had to have very uncomfortable conversations with very senior leaders within our business who don't look anything like me, who have completely different backgrounds, but they've come to that with energy, and willing to listen, and not thinking they have all of the experience and not thinking they're right, but being really open and honest. And that's been a really positive experience, actually, and one I haven't had before. And so I would say putting the onus on leaders to be the ones responsible for the change, and also, like Ibby said, making sure there's like money attached to that where possible, making sure there's like actual targets in place and things like that, which again our business has been really open to discussing. So yeah, those are the big things for me. It's sharing that burden, and not just saying, not just signing an open letter, but if you sign that open letter, do the work after you sign the letter. All of that's good stuff. It's great to put your name to a cause, but actually do the work, and don't just say, oh, we've got a diversity network that can do that work for you. Obviously, we want to do this work, but take it on yourself as business leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine, you're obviously doing a lot with the Cube at the moment with No Shade, right?
Yeah, we were. Again, I think a lot of the things that we were doing is really to try and feed into what Represent was doing. I think we probably both came into being at a similar sort of time. But I think it's really important to allow people to have open conversation. And Black History Month is an opportunity for us to do that. This panel, and us prepping for this panel, has been another really great opportunity for us to do that. However, there needs to be far more opportunities to talk to people that look like us, women, other Black people, other people from ethnic groups, and also talk to C-suite. I think Ibby, you mentioned previously briefly on reverse mentoring. And I think that it's really important that we just continue that conversation just as often as we can, as much as we can, to whoever will listen.
And actually, just while we're here, I'm going to do a shout out that we've launched a reverse mentoring scheme. So that's really positive in dentsu, just to put that in there.
I totally agree with what's been said so far, especially because I see the contrast with some of my friends where they may be like one of two or the only Black person in the business, and they're having it put on them that they should start up an ethnicity pillar or a diversity and inclusion board, and it's kind of been put on them to fix the issue, but it doesn't change the facts, again, from what we've been speaking about, of there being a specific culture at that company and everyone needing to do the work to actually change, well, not fully change it, but become more inclusive and see where you can actually try and include people of different backgrounds as well. I think I definitely agree with the notion that it shouldn't just be on people of ethnic minorities to fix the issues of things that are being done to them. You also have to look at the people who are causing those issues as well. They kind of have to, people have to see, and I get it, it's uncomfortable, but you also have to see where you may have been contributing to that as well, and have those frank discussions with yourself. And if people that you know of ethnic minorities are willing to have those conversations with you as well, have those conversations, but also listen and don't dismiss how they're feeling about certain things, because there's a reason why why people are feeling a certain way, because they know how they're being treated. It might be an unconscious bias for you, but I can consciously feel the effects of your conscious bias or unconscious.
Also be grateful for that, because it's like exhausting, you know, it's emotional labor. It's like, it's great that we're here and we're doing this and we all are happy to have this opportunity, but it's also draining emotionally, you know. So if someone's going to give you that time, you really better cherish it, because it's not always easy for us.
Yeah, I also think that we should definitely be doing this outside of Black History Month. You know, there are a few companies that I've come across within the industry that aren't having loads of events on for the next 4 and a bit weeks. What they're actually doing is putting in initiatives and, as you say, you know, agreements, and actually investing into legacy to change that culture and to ensure that they are being inclusive throughout the whole year, rather than solely focusing that inclusivity on Black History Month.
I think the way that Black History Month is treated most of the time is exactly the same way things went down in June. It's that trend for that period of time to jump on board and talk about certain things, but a lot of people won't look at it outside of that, or look at making those structural long-term changes as well. So I do definitely agree that it's something that we need to be looking at outside of this month as well. And having recently joined Ethnicity Pillar as well, we were talking about certain things that, you know, certain things that we're going to be doing, but it's also like, actually, wait, I think we should be doing this consistently. This is a good thing for people to be able to see outside of when it's trending.
And I think the thing really for me to say is it's just a perception mind shift, right? It starts with really small actions and it will eventually grow into bigger things. So if you're feeling worried or nervous that you have very little power, it really is those small things. So it's not just saying, how are you? It's saying, what do you need from me? And just changing the question can do so much more in that sense, you know, because I'm obviously not okay. So ask me what do I need instead. And I think the second thing is, for me, it's that self-education piece. You know, the resources are there. So, you know, it's about asking the questions, right, and how you ask them. So if you feel like there's something you want to know, or there's something you feel confused about, or you're not sure about how to ask it, then, you know, say that. Like, be honest. You know, we're not terrifying. We're not gonna yell at you and tell you not to ask that. You know, and that's really what it is, isn't it? We're all learning, right? It's a co-exchange, and I think that's how it should be looked at.
I think people might be afraid of offending people, but if you literally don't know how to ask, just say it, and then we take it from there. That's all you can do.
So guys, we've got one question in from the audience, one from Mike McCoy. How can we better stimulate the open conversation? It seems so simple, but experience shows it's really hard. Should we be forcing the conversation more like we're doing here?
I don't think forcing a conversation is appropriate. I think, like Tenny said, if you do have questions or you want to engage in conversation, I think if you approach that with sincere, open, you know, no expectations, then that will more than not be received well. And I think there's only so much we can do as like Black women to push this conversation without fear of perpetuating stereotypes of being aggressive and like pushy and all of that stuff. So yeah, just ask, and please do, and don't expect us to do that all the time.
And if it comes from a place of authenticity, then that's what it really matters. I mean, I've always say sometimes you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Every single one of us on this panel has had to get used to being in uncomfortable spaces and just having to get used to that. So I think that it's going to be tricky for on the other side of that. But if we can do it, I think, well, anyone can do it, right? It's only as hard as you make it.
Yeah, kind of bouncing off that one a bit. You don't need to be Black, and you don't need to be a woman to be concerned with Black issues or female issues. So I think my advice to Mike would be, get to know the cultures, get to know more than your own world and your own culture. Ask within your own teams or within your own business, what are they doing? What are the plans that they're making that surround things that aren't just within your own sphere and within your own reality? And hopefully that should help start those conversations, as well as just asking people and just having to see a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, there's an interesting question that's also come through. I'd be interested to know if the panel ever feel that actively promoting female Black culture on professional networks is ever detrimental to their careers, or in other words, have you ever stopped yourself doing that for fear of what people might think?
Yes, when I first started my career, I was very much, again, you have your probation period, you have a job, you enjoy your job, you like your job, you're okay with the culture. Maybe there are some things that are questionable, but you just go along with it, right? You know that you want to have a career in this company or in this industry. So you just crack on with things and you do whatever you're doing. There was a point for me when I was in a meeting, it was a global meeting, there were loads of people on it, and I was like, I have something of value to say, and I need to just find the moment to say it. I found the moment to say it, and it was great. It was fantastic. And for me, it was just like this light bulb moment that came on. And now I'm like, if you're going to fire me, I'm going to sue you.
So true.
Like, I work hard, and I think it's not going to happen at the beginning of your career, but at some point you have to become fearless. You get good at your job, you gain the skills that you need to do your job better, you become a bit more recognized in your business. If you can, you put yourself out there, and then I'm gonna swear, fuck it, be you, go for it. And if they don't want you, and if it ruins what you've got over here, then go over there, because somebody else over there will take you, and they will appreciate you, and they will appreciate what you're doing.
It's as Friend saying, it's about knowing your audience. I've learned, it took me a long time to realize this, but you know what? You can't change some people. Some people are just not going to care. And I'm not going to waste my time and my energy trying to have a conversation where I have to justify my humanity to you for you to then disregard that, and even worse, offend it, right? So for me, I just feel like it's about speaking to the people who you know are going to listen to you. So if you feel like you're not getting that, if that energy is not being reciprocated, then take the energy somewhere else. Because at the end of the day, the only person who's really losing is you, right? You've got to reclaim that time, right? You've got to reclaim it. And I think that's you have to, because at the end of the day, we all still have jobs to do. I still have to put in my 9 to 5, and I still have to earn my money and pay my bills and live my life. And I can't do that at the expense of something else. So juggle both, and sometimes one will be prioritized over the other, and that's just the way it has to be sometimes.
Yeah.
I used to get, I'll be very quick because I know we've got like 2 minutes left, but I used to get very nervous raising any issues to do with race at all. It's what I was saying earlier about always being the one to laugh the loudest at racist jokes, which is mad to me. And I had to make an active decision to stop doing that. And it makes people uncomfortable, to be honest. As soon as you start calling things out and not playing along, lots of people will distance themselves from you. But it's, as the other ladies have said, that's fine. That's not valuable time. So
yeah, I think if people are going to distance themselves from you, that's just, you don't need to be near them anyway for the sake of your mental health. Exactly. Like Evie said, to have you offend my humanity, like for me, asking to just be treated like a human being and wanting to have the same level of privilege and courtesy, that's not wrong. That's literally what we're all asking for, and it's not at the expense of any other culture or any other race of people. We all want to be seen on the same level of humanity, and we all deserve respect, basic human rights.
Yeah, and what a wonderful message to end on, guys. Like, sadly, that's all we have for today, but I want to thank you. Your advice, your patience with my Wi-Fi, and your incredible contribution towards what you're doing for dentsu. If anyone would like to
We've lost
Yes.
Sabrina.
I think we lost you again.
But yes to everything you're saying.
If you have any questions, get in touch with us. Anyone, I'm sure that's probably what she's saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Thanks so much, guys. Take care and have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.